The following is a presentation of the Force Center podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the Force Center podcast feed, and this particular episode is the Mandalorian Report. An amazing collection of noises. Was that a mythosaur? And then someone in Mos Eisley having too much to drink? Was it Din Djarin almost drowning? Who knows? Well, I guess the person who made the noises knows. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw, and the person making the noises is Ken Napzok. Take me behind the scenes of the noises, Ken.
It was both the roar of a mythosaur as if it was heard on the land, but how you probably heard it underwater.
That is just an audio engineer's dream. A bunch of great noises. This really is a story of fluids, from people drinking too much on Boonta Eve all the way to going into the living waters of Mandalore. This is a very exciting episode. We're talking about Chapter 18, the Mines of Mandalore, and we can't wait to dive in. We know that this is one of our episodes where we probably get a few more ears, a few more eyes on YouTube. So we also want to do a very quick plug for our Patreon. It is patreon.com/forcecenter. We have always been very lucky to have good support there. It's one of our best means of support. So we're trying to put a little bit more focus on it. The big thing that we're doing right now is we are going to do some coverage of Indiana Jones, an episode, a series of podcasts called Indiana Jones in the Perilous Podcasts. The first episode is dropping on Monday, March 20th. We're going to be discussing Indiana Jones all the way up to the release of Dial of Destiny on Patreon. Once Dial of Destiny comes out, we'll make those episodes available publicly. But if you'll want to join us on the journey, you can do so by becoming a Patreon. All sorts of other great stuff on Patreon. Go check it out if you're interested to patreon.com/forcecenter. All right, Ken, I heard some beeps. Do you need to go to Mandalore?
No, I need to disengage Discord is what I need to do.
Hey, that was basically a plug for the Patreon, because we have a great Discord community that's dinging and beeping away like a ship running to Bo-Katan for help. Anyway, hey, did we mention this is a totally spoiler active episode? We already spoiled the end in the first few seconds of our podcast. Anyway, let's get into it. Chapter 18, The Mines of Mandalore. Written by Jon Favreau, directed by Rachel Morrison. This is a new name to Star Wars. We talked a little bit when some of the director names got released. She has had a long and a mighty career as a cinematographer, working with Rick Famuyiwa on Dope, working on, this little film you might have heard of called Black Panther, for her work on Mudbound in 2017. She was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Cinematography. So want to speak with great respect that she is not new to the business. She's not new to filmmaking. She's directed some episodes of television, but her career is more cinematography than direction. So I just think it's great to see somebody who is established, talented, has some connections to the people working on The Mandalorian. And this is such a great opportunity to have Star Wars spotlight talented people and maybe make people more aware of somebody who is very accomplished, but is maybe not a name that fans are throwing around.
Yeah, I love that stuff. And I love that Rick said, hey, come on board this train. I can open up the door for you here. All your wonderful this let's take it here. And this is what it does. It levels you up. Not that your skills couldn't get you there by yourself, but Star Wars has a way of saying hello to the world with you. So I love this. I love this episode and love her work and love her here.
Yeah, I mean, all the skill in the world is not going to make a difference unless, people put a spotlight on it. And obviously, like I said, it's a pretty big spotlight to be nominated for an Academy Award.
Yeah, right.
But in the director conversation and in bringing more people into the team of Star Wars. And we've seen this great explosion through Disney Plus of we meet somebody on one episode and the next thing you know, they're directing all of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And it's exciting to see every one of these names come through and wonder what'll be next.
Yeah, agree with that.
So this episode was about 40 minutes of actual storytelling, leaving some, room for those credits. what prep did you do to watch, Ken? What was your viewing experience this time around?
A lot going on. We're all, everyone in the world, you, me, Jennifer, anyone listening, we're all going through a lot right now. So I've been working hard and checking the clock to see if I'm going to be able to sit down and relax and watch Mando. And I was able to do that. I was able to pump the brakes, slow down, pour a whiskey, mix it with some ginger ale, and sit down at 11:56, and the episode was up. So I started it before midnight. Felt like I got ahead of it all. Then I saw that it was a longer episode. I was like, oh, no, I'm going to be going to bed at pretty much the same time that I would have got if I started straight up midnight. But it's just, there is those moments. We all have them. Again, the state of the world is what it is, but you got to find those joys when you can, and even though they're hard. But sitting down on the couch, feet up, sweatpants on, new Star Wars, that ain't a bad thing. And it was fun to take that in.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same place as you of, some great stuff going on. We've been doing a lot of work for Force Center and getting a great response as we build some new stuff. And I've got some other fun career stuff going on and some, family stuff that's challenging and need to be there for people. So it's a lot. And I've been having a harder time. Like I remember the midnight experience, the first, Disney Plus shows is this sort of glowing, experience. And I've really had to work to go like, I got to put all that away. I got to take a deep breath and calm down and get in sweatpants mode. So I did my normal ritual of pouring some whiskey. In particular, I put some whiskey in a little Jedi shot glass that my wife got for me. I have a lot of Din Djarin action figures, I realized. And I like my little ritual of, about 15 minutes before I'll post an image of my drink in an action figure, which action figure buddies are watching their stories with me. This Din Djarin is Din Djarin with soft goods cape. It's the Din that came with the Razor Crest. So I have that Din sort of peering into the whiskey as though he's maybe going to consider taking a bath in it. People I think who love the show have been sort of like, this is awesome. It's meaningful and it's deep, but also, hey, the quest this season is to take a bath. And people who I think are a little down on the show, a little snarky, have been making jokes. Like, we're watching this whole thing to be about a bath. So people who love it, people are being snarky. There's been so much focus on bathing. So I thought when I took that picture, I really did think like, I'm having some fun with the whole bathing thing. Ken, I did not think I would get to see him bathe this episode.
Yes, which is something I'll talk about in the overall reaction. But yes, there you go. It's like an accidental spoiler. Which, don't worry, the previous one kind of spoiled some things. So we all started with a leg up.
Yeah, I mean, the previously on really did like say this is what we're zeroing in on, and hey, don't forget that whole mythosaur thing. But still, with the movement of the show, you never know. So that was my vibe. I got into the mood, and I was able to enjoy the hell out of it. So let's talk about overall reactions. You love it, like it, struggle with it. Did you drop your drink and yell, "He's bathing! He's bathing"?
No, I didn't. But I really dug this episode. It's I am almost worried. I don't know how I'm going to be able to talk about it. I really don't. You and I take notes and try to take deep notes and lines and cross-reference things and all that stuff. This is a very spiritual episode, and I'm trying to find the best way to talk about it because I think it affected me personally. I think it has some ramifications in the real world, as Star Wars should and often does. And I think it was beautiful. I think it was challenging, and I loved it. The viewing of it, I'll say this: I thought there was at times it was choppy in the writing, but smooth in the execution, and that's not necessarily saying it was written poorly. It bumped around a lot, and last week kind of bumped around a lot. And I just there was a couple of moments I was like, I just would like to stay here. Don't go back there, or don't send Grogu there. But then Rachel Morrison found, this is why I'm glad you highlighted it up top. She found the moments where it needed to slow down, and she got us to where we needed to go emotionally. And therefore I just really loved it, especially on rewatch. But yeah, spiritual episode.
No, I really agree with you. I think that there is a style to Jon Favreau's writing of the Mandoverse, Mandalorian seasons and Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah,
that is to me taking the opportunity to say I have created a level of success where I'm not necessarily going to have a lot of executives going, this beat must happen at this point in the script. This is exactly the way it must be structured. There is, to me, an escape from rigidity. And sometimes that sings for me, and every once in a while it feels a little different because his storytelling does move differently.
Yeah.
But to me, it is very purposeful. It is a choice, as you've talked about, before. It's not like Jon Favreau was like, how does writing go? One of the most successful people to ever create storytelling, by the numbers, the things that he's been involved in. But I think there is this structure and energy of it's this very patient. The character does this, and so they need to do this, and everything is a action and a reaction, and it's very methodical and linear. And I think that was extremely successful in this episode for me, because I did feel like that's kind of a note you'd normally get of like, well, okay, we've got all this forward movement with Din and Grogu, and then Grogu leaves, and then another person comes through the same clouds. But it all pays off in the way that Bo-Katan and Din come together and go even deeper into their home in a way they could only do together. So for me, all of it pays off. Yeah,
and you're highlighting one of the moments I absolutely love of Bo-Katan approaching and arriving on Mandalore, and I agree with you there. It's sometimes it really, really works, and this is one of those episodes I thought I felt a little bit more. But and for those, like you said up top, we get a lot of maybe newer ears listening to the show or people checking back in. I think it's fine to remix. I'm a big Favreau fan, and that starts with Swingers. Doug Liman directs it, but that script is this. It's the same thing.
It's slice of life.
We're going to go over to the Los Feliz golf course, and we're going to have a scene there. And we're going to deal with the emotions there. And then we're going to go have this scene. And we're going to spend some time playing video game hockey. And you're going to get the characters. And so it does work. I think it was sometimes it's a, I don't know, stay with Peli. Let's get some more Peli. And I just felt like, but it works in terms of Star Wars. But that really means a director's got to keep the emotional through lines going. And that's what was at play here. And you're right. That's when the camera, not necessarily the camera, but when the show wanted to push everything in and go in close on Bo-Katan's face reacting to Mandalore, go in to the pause, even the way that he says this is the way when they're having the father conversation, the stuttered kind of emotional pause. This episode was full of those moments, and it flowed so nicely because of that.
Yeah, no, I really agree. I think I'm joking a little bit about the bathing thing, about people's different expectations toward it. I do think that Favreau's writing is always extremely intentional. And if somebody was like, hey, well, you broke this alleged rule, and why doesn't this happen at this beat? I think he could tell you why in a heartbeat every time. Yeah. It's not like he's just, dashing it off, in my opinion. But sometimes I do think, not only in the Mandoverse, but I think this happened in Andor, and I think it's happening in a lot of streaming shows, where the idea of an episode is very complete, but you don't quite have that. It seems like this episode is about this challenge, so we see the beginning and the middle and the end of this challenge. We'll get to right where it seems like the characters are going to deal with the big thing that's been hanging over the episode, and then it's a break and it's a cliffhanger to next episode. And I was just sort of I was really thrilled that this one finished the idea. It stated the bathing idea and it went all the way through the bathing and cut off at to me, the exact right moment. And now we're going to deal with the ramifications of the bathing.
Bath time for the soul, indeed.
Yeah. A couple other big picture thoughts for me is that this was another episode, like I think most of Mandalorian, certainly the premiere of season 3, that really embraces all of Star Wars, right? The whimsical with Peli, the fan history and fan love of specific characters like R5D4 that, people of our generation fell in love with, not only because of the one scene with the bad motivator, but because we had an action figure. And we had to wonder, we had to make up adventures. And I know that's not everyone's experience or everyone's favorite, but it's clearly a part of fandom and a part of fandom that this show keeps embracing. It also just embraced pulpy space fantasy action, from the kind of the weird to the just downright creepy, a horrible monster in the depths that is, that was to me half General Grievous, half Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Like,
great way to look at it. Yeah.
Total creepy space fantasy. So everything from this sort of like, here's the most whimsical, what people can argue is fan service, to the most that's cool, that's creepy, that's dark, that's badass, all that stuff. The continuing each episode embracing all of the extremes of Star Wars is really interesting.
Yeah, I definitely need to highlight the iDroid of terror. It was I had an actual kind of a moment when it's unveiled. Love that. The all aspects of Star Wars is a great way to look at Mando, and again, sometimes it's not for everyone. We're seeing so much talk about that there, but I mean, I don't know, when Grogu gives a whimsical or fearful coup, I'm there for it because it means so much, and that's what I keep loving about Mando. And one thing I want to say about this episode, it took us, once it kind of started, right, it took us to where we kind of maybe expected to go eventually in this season, but all right, it's happened. Some of it's happening in this episode, right? The Mines of Mandalore. Here we go. It still got there in a very unexpected way, right? Like it still wasn't from the fighting, the Phil Tippett kind of design characters there. I know he's been involved with the show more, to, the comedy, the R5, all the stuff you're talking about. It did not do what I would have thought. Oh, if we're going to the depths of Mandalore to take this path, it had its own path there, and I really respect that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that was one of the things that was so rewarding about it is it did turn this sort of the structure of previous seasons of Mandalore, of the Mandalorian on its head, right? The first season is pretty much, protect the child, right? The second season is very much deliver him to the Jedi. That's the stated goal at the beginning, and that's the last shot of the season, right? Yeah. So if in his stated goal is, I must bathe, I must cleanse myself of being in a apostate. There is a leaning toward thinking like, well, I can't wait until the last episode when he bathes and he flies out on the mythosaur, it really turned that on its head, which leaves it very exciting. We know we've gotten a lot of the trailer shots. There's other glimpses, so we'll talk about some guesses about what might come next. There's still more to be done, but it leaves on such an exciting moment because of what it means for the characters, but also because of what it means for how much it's widening out what the story of this season could be.
Yeah. We're off the path, the known path here, and you're so right. Like I had some thoughts of, I'm bad at prediction. I don't love predicting things, but we all kind of have that. Hey, what's next? And it's like, all right, cool. So we might spend an episode looking for IG-11's, processor chip, memory chip. And the moment we're like, nah, take R5. I was like, oh, okay, we're moving at a different clip, and I love that.
Yeah, I saw 3 new tweets making, the joke about how Mandalorian is structured like a video game. And like, it is. That's often what the deal is. It's like, to me, if you don't enjoy it, totally fine. But it's like, oh, Columbo solved another mystery. Like, that's what he does on the show. Yeah. But I saw like 3 more tweets about like, oh, the next episode of Mandalorian will be like, I'll give you a sandwich for if you give me a blah, 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 and that was also kind of one of my overall reactions of to this episode of like, well, so much for the snark about the deal making. yeah. Because he just went and did his thing. It was really, really great for me to get quality Bo-Katan time. We'll spend plenty of time talking about it. I've always enjoyed the character. I've always enjoyed her, Katie Sackhoff's performance. It's great to see her in Mandalorian. But I think I felt like in her previous appearances in The Mandalorian, they were great, but they were so table setting. They were so moving the character into position as a chess piece. And I don't mean that as a criticism. It's kind of what you need to do. It was so great to, just like them going deeper into Mandalore, go deeper into her character, spend some time with her, truly feel her emotions, and really spend time with her as a full character was great.
I really agree with that. I think it was season 2 is a case of she's in this story to serve the purpose of Din, right? That literally information. And this one felt like, because last week we had the great scene, some wonderful internet content based around that scene out there. All of this, Bo-Katan, all this stuff is great. It's making me laugh. But this week has just felt like, much like Katie Sackhoff being pushed up the bill, right, on the credits, we've got kind of almost a co-story here, and I felt that, and it was well earned, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think final thing for me, I want to say big picture before we get into individual ideas is I think responding to what you're talking about is spiritual. I think this is about the marriage of practical knowledge and spirituality. But also to me, it isn't, I don't think it's trying to be meta, but I receive it that way. That there's the tension between Bo-Katan and Din about, is there any magic left, right? Or is this just theater? Is there any meaning under the fun and the lore? And when the character's actively debating that, I can't help but feel that real life debate about Star Wars, that real life debate that I've been trapped in my entire genre loving life of you just like the weird things. You just like bright colors because you're too impatient to sit down and read Dickens, which I absolutely have and enjoyed. Dickens was popular at the time. Anyway, I think that the idea that these ideas and images and things that Bo-Katan literally describes as children's stories are not empty. There is still meaning down there in the mine. That spoke to me as a fan of Star Wars, as a fan of genre, as a fan of digging deeper, as a fan of the argument that, yep, action figures are little pieces of plastic that are sold for money. Yep. They are little symbols of capitalism, but they're also symbols of what the characters mean to us. They're symbols of moments in our lives. And just this idea that, hey, you know what? Maybe take a break on the cynicism and ask yourself, what is the meaning, the spiritual meaning baked into this thing that you're passing over very quickly based on service judgment?
Yeah. I love that you said that. I don't know if we want to transition to themes, but I might have too much to say on that. I not only agree with you, I feel that in my soul, because there's a lot that I think you could take from what was in this episode alone, including some ties to religions, peoples, communities scattered. We're going to get to that. Yes. But I absolutely think there's that angle of it here. I often talk on our Star Wars news show about running into comics in the green room at comedy clubs, and they find out I'm a Star Wars fan, and wow, those conversations go a lot of different spots. And one of them a couple weeks ago, it still affected me. He wasn't even being mean, but he just said, man, don't you think it's weird that we just watch like something like Star Wars and attach all this meaning to it? Oh, so silly. And I didn't even have the response, because this is probably someone who says Fellowship of the Rings is just people walking, like we're just watching this guy take a bath. And I just didn't. I don't have anything for that sometimes, because that, number one, you must do what you feel is right, of course. But we have a listener, Bill Bro Baggins is a username in Discord, and he just had a very unexpected, sad, tragic pet loss, which is horrible. And we were exchanging some messages, and he was like, I love that I can see this stuff, these fantasy and myth stories, on that level where it does guide me. It does fill me up. It does help me in the healing process. That's what these stories are there for. If you want to engage with that level, you and I often talk about engage with the story that's presented and how you discuss it, review it. But beyond all that is what you're talking about. And to have Bo-Katan literally just saying what you're saying, it's children's stories. There's a lot of different things going to go to it, but I do think it was meta. I got to think it was intended, because these are, by the way, this is a guy, Jon Favreau, along with Dave Filoni, who were accused of just playing with their toys. We had recently, last week, a hot take going around, former coworker of mine saying, Andor makes me want to get up and fight faster than in my real life. Mando wants to make me buy a toy. And it's like, the first part is your truth. The second part is you're swinging and missing on what this all really means. And I feel for you. I'm not angry at you. I'm just certain that you're missing a lot of things that could make you just make your life a little better at times. I don't know, because we're all down there. We're all overwhelmed. This episode, absolutely, you struck a chord with me, Joseph, because it absolutely, that's when the episode ended. I was like, I don't quite know how to feel about it, other than I feel it all has meaning.
Yeah. Yeah. And as always, if somebody watches a show and doesn't enjoy it, or somebody says, hey, I hear everything you're saying, but it didn't strike that chord. I didn't find that. I see what you're saying, but I heard all the notes, but none of the music's playing. So be it. That's just fine. But to me, I feel like there is a little bit of an analogy in Bo-Katan of like, Bo-Katan has such understandable reasons to say there's nothing down there but loss and pain and pretty words that have been made up to paper over how hard reality is.
Yeah.
That's all that's down there. That's all that's down there is theater, theater for our subjects. Totally understandable. We can all get to that point. And she would have, if she had not literally plunged deeper, if she had not followed the conviction of her beliefs of Mandalorians stronger together, which I definitely want to talk about, to keep saving Din no matter what. If she hadn't taken that step past cynicism and literally looked deeper, she would not have had what is possibly a kind of rebirth, a connection to something bigger, a connection to something that she thought couldn't be. It's really about like, it's easier to believe in lots of things when you're younger. It could be spiritual. It could be just hope. It could be just magic, right? Just that going out on a Saturday night is fun. Every level of belief is easier when you're younger, and you can lose it. You calcify, right? But you got to be willing to see it. That's what Bo-Katan literally does, is go deeper and sees it.
And has what I think is the best swear word in Star Wars. You just can't hear it because it's just bubbles out of her mouth.
Maybe that is the first introduction of the actual F-bomb, right? Look, Mandalorians love their weapons, so if anybody's going to drop an F-bomb first, it should be a Mandalorian and underwater. So we're getting into some of our big picture reactions. Ken, I want to talk about it from this perspective and see what you think. I really thought that there's this big idea of rebirth. I think rebirth and home, the idea of what is a home, how much does the home give you meaning, has been a big idea of the show and this season in general. But I think it's really dealing with depth with this era of time of the Empire fell. Everybody is traumatized. The New Republic is trying to rebuild. But a lot of the characters that we're spending time with in the whole Mandoverse of Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett are about rebuilding and rebirth, right? Tatooine is going through a rebirth. Mos Pelgo changing its name to Freetown and becoming a community. Boba and the crew rebuilding Mos Espa. This episode, we really see Peli's ties to the culture of Mos Eisley and that idea of home. Grief is building Navarro City into a home. He's pitching Din on living there. The idea of home. Luke is just starting his new Jedi school. This is a time of rebirth and renewal. So I feel like that's a big idea that's going throughout this era, this Mandoverse. And then I think this episode is really zeroing in on the specific question of if there's all this rebirth everywhere, can Mandalore be a part of that? Is there still life, value, meaning, or is it an empty husk? All sorts of quotes, obviously in the show supporting this, of Din telling Grogu, I know it looks scary, but it was once green and beautiful back when the songs were written. So many Bo-Katan lines about, it didn't always look like this, just ashes now, all of that. So I think the whole thing is really framed by rebirth. And then, this is not a shocking take, right? Din, the actual plot is that Din is in search of, metaphorical rebirth that is very similar to many rituals here on the old real world of bathing in the waters, cleansing, and starting new. A lot more elements to the way I think they deal with rebirth, but I want to pitch it back to you and see if that idea, that framing makes sense to you.
It absolutely makes sense to me, because underneath it comes some of the other things I think we'll discuss, but that's what's going on for everyone, and to have this season answer it on this level in terms of the Mandalorian people. just in terms of Star Wars lore, it's like hey, where were they? Hey, why were they off in the shadows? What's going on? Now we get to answer that and take it from Star Wars and maybe apply it to our own lives in certain ways. Yeah, absolutely. This rebirth and how to do it, how to get there. The faith and the fear of it all is at stake here for me.
Yeah, that's great. I think I want to get back to faith and fear. Those are two powerful F's. But I think there's, to me, other ideas of renewal other than the literal community rebuilding, the literal, bathing rebirth that Din is trying to go through. I think there's a little bit of act of rebirth and renewal by the renewed relationship between Din and Grogu, that Din is very aware that I am teaching another generation. What is teaching another generation if not, rebirth? There's literally the new generation needs to learn what the old knew and grow beyond it. And there's so many beats in these first two episodes where he is just explicitly teaching Grogu. But the quote in this one, when they're arriving at Mandalore, and Din says, "It's Mandalore, the home of our people."
Yeah,
that really struck a chord with me. That we know that's the plot, and it has been since season 1 that Din is going to consider Grogu a foundling the same way he was. But now that they've really chosen one another, that idea of like, I'm teaching you not just to be safe in the galaxy, I'm teaching you to be a Mandalorian, to be one of us. It's a kind of rebirth.
Yeah, and to always be able to find yourself no matter where you are and what you're doing. And that's some of the powerful stuff running through this episode. You're talking about rebirth and where do they belong in it. Just think of cultures, peoples, lands scattered throughout history, some of it with strong religious overtones, some of it things we've seen in our own country. And this happened, and how do we get there? But also, where do we go from here? And that's what here in Bo-Katan, just being heartbroken of not the loss of place, but the loss of community, and that it might have, it definitely had something to do with the Empire, definitely had something to do with them, but also how we lost ourselves and how we continue to struggle through all of that throughout the histories of Mandalore too. But yeah, I thought it was really powerful in that regard. That's a great topic sentence.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about Bo-Katan is one of my favorite parts of this, because some of the rebirth we're talking about is literal of the towns and of Din bathing. Bo-Katan's is so spiritual, right? That she's convinced that the symbols in the lore are meaningless, that there's nothing to cling to but ashes, and that's definitely about the Empire literally turning the place into glass and ashes. But also, I think there's this like depression about the people of Mandalore, that the desire to bring them all together, and the like, yep, the Empire literally did this, but it happened because we were scattered, we were separated, we weren't strong enough to face them together. So, when she says nothing to cling to but ashes, when Din's like excited, like, you were right, you can breathe, there's the stuff going on. And she's saying nothing to cling to but ashes. I think it's literal, but I think it is also, that's where she is feeling about the society, about the Mandalorian people. And to me, it's just such a massive rebirth of the possibility of believing more, believing hope, believing that there's meaning behind the lore and the symbols of Mandalore. Such a rebirth when she sees that mythosaur, and I think that's what gives it all its power, right? It's that it's a reawakening, I think, for her.
Absolutely. I'm still gonna say right now, I have a 2% holdout that the mythosaur wasn't real and that she just saw the rocks move. But that, it's real in the show. But I'm still like, maybe it wasn't there. No.
I'm bringing it back to reality. Yeah, maybe it was an animatronic. Maybe there was a, like Mandalorian Disneyland down there. Final thoughts on rebirth, and then I want to hear more about kind of how you were framing the faith and the fear and all that. I think it's interesting that even R5 goes through a little bit of a transformation and rebirth. Peli is the figure who is always succeeding and pushing Din toward change and adaptation. Last episode, he seemed like he was pretty set on it's gotta be IG-11. And she pretty quickly talks him into something new. So she's often, Peli, a symbol of pushing toward reinvention. That's the whole story of the N1. And it's you can look at it as totally comic that she's just like, hey, I'm gonna fast talk Din into paying too much for R5. Right. But you can also look at it as her doing the same thing for R5. Like, get out there and be yourself. Don't be a coward. You're an astromech. Act like one. So even R5 goes through like a strange little rebirth.
No, I put that under, I'm so glad you framed it that way. I put it in this different levels of bravery, right? This episode deals with that a few times. And you said the line, don't be a coward, you're an astromech. Act like one. Grogu must help Din. Bo-Katan must face what she fears and all that stuff. And it's this different level of bravery. And I had this idea, too, that I think it applies here, too, of before we even get into faith and fear. One of the themes was, are you ready for an adventure? And Grogu was watching, learning, the how and why we adventure, because what you get out of it when you step forward, which is perhaps the hardest thing to do. I feel like R5 every day right now. I feel like R5 and I need to just, don't be a coward. You're a podcaster. Act like one. Like I really feel it. And I love that little beat. And it really does set the tone. And you're right about Peli. You explained it before in such wonderful ways of, yes, Amy Sedaris is doing this kind of crazy, silly character. In season 1, I struggled with her a little bit. That's all gone because of what she's there for. And always saying, no, move forward. That's the best way. It's important. It's important to have her there.
Yeah. And there is something, if you're willing to dive into the living waters and check for the mythosaur, there is something more there that every time he encounters Peli, she gives him a new idea. And I don't think Din is emotionally aware enough. Like, there's the real practical, like she has resources. I know her. I know that she's a fast talker. I trust her enough, There's all those real practical surface level things going on in Din and Peli's relationship. But like, I wonder if there's something like deep inside Din, and like every time I'm stuck, she gives me a little push, and I kind of don't like it, but I grumble and I accept it, and it works out. I mean, he even says about the ship, no complaints, right? The ship that he did not want. But she pushed him into trying something new and adapting, and now he's happy,
Yeah. Ain't that the way, huh?
Yep. My last idea about rebirth was the dark side of it. I thought it was really interesting that the absolute creeper creature, no name that I'm aware of, so I'm thinking of him as General Gollum. You had a name for him. What did you call him?
The eye droid of terror.
The eye droid of terror. Yeah, the nothing left but one big eye and half a brain and maybe some weird porcupine spikes. Head can detach, no problem. Super creepy. Would have been just fine if it was, who knows what he's going to do to Din. Probably eat him. The fact that they took time to show that the way this tortured creature is surviving is trapping anyone who comes down there looking for hope and desanguinating them, literally taking their lifeblood. Wasn't creepy enough that it's a robot spider mech. It's also a vampire. Cool. But that to me, it tied into everything that one's feeling about this idea of, is it just this kind of crude matter without meaning, or is it vital? And like, hey, blood's a pretty good example of living water,
Yeah, absolutely. Great connection there. Once again, themes of horror applying to themes of the real world and life.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of real life vampires out there.
I don't want to run into that one there.
Yeah. So I'm curious what you were thinking when you say faith and fear, and what part of the episode is speaking to you so deeply with those two big Fs.
Yeah. This episode, it's funny. We're going into Indiana Jones season around these parts where there's a lot of, particularly Last Crusade, this leap of faith, the path. I almost wanted Bo-Katan to yell, "The penitent man shall pass." There's a lot of this walk of faith, and then you can take that in a lot of ways. And this was a spiritual episode, and it probably affected some people in some very intimate, real ways with their own belief systems and their own, religions that might be a part of. And I think that's right. I think that was there. But it's the way I looked at it there is the Bo-Katan, fear is a Star Wars word we use a lot, and the dark side's trying to sell that fear. Those in power trying to sell, play on your fear, and Bo-Katan faces other kind of fear. R5 had a fear, but Grogu had some fear. Bo-Katan had this fear, and it's this fear of self. It's a fear of what you might be worth. It's a fear of what you lost. And faith can be an inspiration, and it can be about survival too. I think that's a lot of what's at play with Din and the armorer. You and I've talked about that. There's perhaps some ominous overtones to what the armorer has done or taught, but also there's this sense of that's how he survived. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's not bad on alone, but faith, when it goes from inspiration and survival into a tool of fear or containment, that's the danger. And I think there's what Bo-Katan's always been kind of preaching, that other side of it. You zealots, this and that. But for her to kind of have to, what you're talking about, marrying the ideas, there's a balance to be found between these two views on Mandalore, I think. But also, she's got it in her heart. It was interesting to me because she's talking a tough game, especially against the Children of the Watch. Understandably, I think you and I, again, have had those discussions. But to have suddenly this episode to be like, yeah, but you know what? We've been split. That's why. And I lost faith in that we could even bridge the gap. What you got the sword, wave the sword around. They'll follow you. And this idea, that Bo-Katan was right. The Mandalore is not cursed. And I, Ken Napzok, do not think that the planet is actually cursed. I don't necessarily believe in that. I don't think that's real. But when you start to look at it, when you start to think about it, this planet represents the biggest fears the Mandalorian people have. It represents the fears Bo-Katan has. It represents the sorrows that we're afraid to face. We are R5. We don't want to go face that stuff. And so if you see it as a curse, then it just might be. Was I? Look around, she says. And so I don't think it's an actual curse, but I think it definitely, if you lost the faith, it can start to contain you. It can start to play on your fears. And I just think it's this hard thing to really put into words for me, but to watch her just kind of go like, yeah, a lot of that stuff's destructive. A lot of the stuff isn't the way. But it is who we are, and it does guide us. And I do miss it. And I do miss our community, and I miss who I was, and I miss who I could be. And to get to the next level, I got to have some sort of faith in it. I got to believe in something. I got to believe in that this all has meaning. I just don't. We're going to go into those details even more and more, I'm sure. But I don't know. Just that's the way I took it. And literally watching her, even more than Din, watching her land with a smile, land with this is home, and even though it's sad, and being, hey, it was green, and watching her go down this cave. I thought that design was great. And to go into the waters, to go all the way down to the deep. It was really, Din's been on it. He's on this walk. He's like, cool, I'm here, taking a bath. And she's like, okay. But he's along the way, you see the breaks. You see the breaks of what she really, it betrays what she really feels inside when, looking at Grogu. What are you looking at? All that kind of stuff. And then just, like you said, to take the deep dive, to take that walk of faith all the way to the bottom and find out that what you might fear could one day be what makes you stronger. That's a hard journey, and a hard journey to do in a show that's just about selling toys.
Yeah. Oh man, I love everything you're saying. I think you're encapsulating a lot of great things. I think I love the discussion of the planet is cursed, right? And I think from Bo-Katan's perspective, this is speculating, but how, if you defined yourself as, we are the greatest warriors. We are warriors. We are strong. That is what ultimately defines us. And hey, when we go too far, it means there's infighting and destruction. But when we use it in a positive way to rally the communities together and lead like my sister tried to lead, like Satine tried to lead, it's like, yeah, we are warriors, so we can walk the hardest path, right? We can say no to joining this unjust, stupid war, right? But you're still left at the end of the day, and Bo-Katan has been on both extremes of what a Mandalorian can be. We meet her as a vicious, cruel member of the Death Watch, fully investing in the old ways. We've just strength, might makes right. If you're stronger than somebody, you should take something from them because that's the way. all the way to trying to walk in the footsteps of her sister and not seek revenge for revenge's sake, which is, what she tells Satine. She's been on all these extremes, but how could you not feel cursed if you're like, I define Mandalore as warriors, then why are we always defeated?
Yeah.
Why is our home always ravaged? How can this needle be thread,
Yeah.
And to really kind of look at what Bo-Katan might feel the curse is, which I think she speaks to in this episode.
Yeah. Because it's so funny too. There's a moment here. I love what you said there. If we're warriors, why are we always losing? Get in, loser. Let's go lose it. Like it's real powerful there. I'm making a joke, but it's real powerful. I love the moment where I almost want to be like, oh, shut up, Bo. Which is like, oh, you've never eaten pog soup. And I wanted to yell, oh, so you do believe in tradition? You do believe in it? That's not just a ceremonial soup; it's part of who you are. Okay, I got it. You're kind of hiding what you feel here. You're hiding your feelings in the bottom of pog soup.
Yeah. No, I really agree with that, and I think that's what was so great about this episode. I love the whole thing, but it just became electric in that second half when Din and Bo-Katan finally were able to truly, deeply interact. Right?
Really did.
You're calling it faith and fear. I think that's a great way to look at it. I think I kind of thought about it just like working together, coming together, right? Because Din and Bo-Katan are kind of a symbol of the fracture of their people, the kind of fractures that Bo-Katan is talking about. We always end up subdividing and fighting and making ourselves too weak to face the real enemy, right? And both Din and Bo-Katan have strong, stubborn, I'll go alone. Din tries to go alone. Bo-Katan tells him to go away, right? She's marching out there to tell him for the final time to F off. I want to be left alone, she shouts at the ship before she even sees what's going on. I'm in my sweatpants. She had the little blankie for sleeping on the throne. It was great.
Yeah.
They both have this strong, we're warriors, we'll walk our own path. But they've always been in their interaction too. But they've always been aligned on. But we want to be there for one another, And in our actions, we keep being there for one another. In this episode, was able to dive into the idea of that they have these very different claims to Mandalorian heritage in very different perspectives because of it. Bo-Katan knows the reality, the born there experience, the history, the other beings on the planet, the politics, the pog soup. Like, I know everything, from royalty to pog soup. And Din knows the foundling way, the devotion to the creed and in the old way. So they have these different perspectives, but through their two different perspectives, they keep coming to the same goal, which is bringing the Mandalorian people together, right?
Yeah.
We'll talk more about some of the kind of canon of what Bo-Katan says about needing to bring people together. But when you're talking about faith, I really responded to the way Din talked about the creed and its purpose. A lot of times we've seen, I think, the darker and the more cultish side of Children of the Watch of he's been told this is the way. He hasn't been told there's another way. He's in fact been lied to by omission. That there are other ways. So you can see sometimes Din is like, you haven't been given the tools to choose. You're lost because armor didn't show you where all the stars in the sky are. So you're actually lost, right? So there's a dark side, as you're saying, to the creed, into Din. And sometimes you can wonder of like, is he considering this for himself or is he just doing this because he knows no other way?
Yeah.
And this was an episode, a moment where he made this sort of much more passionate and personal argument for his own belief in the creed.
Yes.
Is that it is there to keep Mandalorians safe. He says, our people are scattered like stars in the galaxy. The creed is how we survived. You rescued me. I'll always be in your debt. We definitely have seen this from the beginning that, even in the very first episode of the show where Din is just out there being a brutal bounty hunter, in his mind, it's all for the foundlings, right? because to him, Mandalorians are a savior. A child looks up and a Mandalorian is there to save them. But to have that reinforced here, that he's not just like, I'm not thinking through the meaning of the creed for myself. I'm just doing what I was told to do, and I'm scared to have a new life, so I'm just going to do what Armor does. I think there is some element of that. But this was an episode where he basically told Bo-Katan and us, this is why I believe in the creed. This is why season 3 is my mission for me. I'm not doing anything out of duty or for someone else. This is for me because I believe it is the way to get to where you want to be, Bo-Katan, where we are stronger together. And then I think they have these, come from these different places, have a similar goal, and then the big conclusion of the episode is that they need what the other have. They need Bo-Katan's grounded knowledge, and they need Din's unshaking faith that the lore, the creed, has meaning. And I don't think it is a blind faith, because he articulates a practical reason that he believes in the faith.
Yeah.
And we see him walk it again and again, of being there for other people and saving the young. So I think it's just really a really powerful story of people from different perspectives who have every reason to just start punching and flamethrowing.
Yeah.
Managing to come together, and then, they both arise from the fearful depths, reborn with what they need.
Yeah, this is great stuff too. Particularly when it comes to Din, I think he's had many times over the course of now 2 seasons and 2 episodes to have some real world experience, confirm some of his thoughts. But he had so much of a challenge. So much of last season was, why are your helmets off? I was told not to. And I like what you're saying about this episode in particular, but this season, confirming this. Faith is a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing when it's used as self-reflection. When it's used as a guide, it's a horrible thing when wielded like a power, wielded like a weapon. And I think there might be some times where I think maybe the armor has gone that way. We don't know all of her story yet. I would love to have that campfire conversation with her. Add her into this mix with these 2 characters. Just discuss it. Have some tea, pog soup, and discuss everything. But I think what you're talking about, for at least the way I'm looking at it, is Din really finding the true meaning of faith. Without the creed, what are we? It's this view of survival. It's this view of purpose. And Bo-Katan is someone who has tried to find purpose in so many different ways, in so many right ways. But it's blood, it's title, it's experience, it's symbols, it's a weapon, and none of it worked. As Bono would say, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Right. And to have those 2 married, a lot of things what you're talking about, I think, are reflected in these beautiful little moments. This is some of the best stuff Sackhoff has done as his character. Beautiful little moments of awe of Din walking in. She's kind of like, wow, I would have been snarky about this, but I'm seeing it. I'm seeing what it really means to him, and I'm feeling it. I think that's how I played that moment. Landing, coming in, what Mandalore, the idea of it, missing it, the meaning of it, whatever, those kind of moments. And then the one that I think a lot of people are talking about, the best of this is the way so far in the show, talking so highly of her father and what he did for Mandalore and died. And yeah, he is great. She's obviously got a very hard edge about it, as she probably should. And just his soft, kind of broken, this is the way. And how that affected her, and now she might see some of the value in what he's talking about, and some of the purpose in why we would do that, and why her father exemplified that. Because I'm sure her father probably believed in some of this showmanship, as she kind of tosses it off as. I bet he believes in that, the purpose of it, not the pomp.
Yeah, no, I think that this is the way was really, they had a back and forth about it when they first encountered, right? Her being a little bit sarcastic about it, very sarcastic about it, and then a little bit more respectful when they worked together, and that when he put himself on the line for them. But that this is the way, once again, did feel like this is not just something I say, I believe it. And I think both of their perspectives are valid and to be wrestled with, right? Unless they change the story. We'll talk about it more in our canon section. Her father died in Mandalorian civil wars. More pointless fighting from Bo-Katan's perspective. That destroyed her entire family that she was a big part of. It's understandable that she would feel the loss of a great man for no good reason.
Yeah.
And Din would say, but I believe protecting, the idea of Mandalore, protecting the people of Mandalore is the highest calling. And I believe that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's straightforward imagery of, plunging into the belly of the beast, going deeper and deeper into your fear, passing through the clouds, passing into the cave, passing by the monsters. Now, can we go? How deep can we possibly go? Has anyone ever been this deep in Mandalore?
Yeah.
It's straightforward, but there's also this power to it where, Bo-Katan has that, like, I've been down to the depths and I know it was there and I know it's not there and there's nothing but pain left. And she needs to push past that. I think there is some great stuff going on with Din, where he has this just absolute Terminator, like, I walk forward, I'm on my path, and that's it. And that is sometimes powerful and sometimes exactly what you need. But there's also a danger in it of not questioning. And I feel like that's again what's like so beautifully balanced with what they both need at the end of it's such a powerful beat that Bo-Katan mocks everything as it's just lore, it's just myth, it's just children's story, it doesn't have any meaning.
Yeah.
And then she sees the meaning, she feels the meaning. That's really powerful to see. But I think there's kind of a moment like that for Din too, where it is meaningful when he is absolutely invested in the creed. He's thought about what those words mean. He knows for himself what they mean. They're not just being fed to him, but he's also so still lacking in knowledge that he literally marches himself off of a cliff he doesn't know is there. And there's there's a comedy to it. There's a great mirroring of Ragnar, the kid from the first episodes, bathing, being interrupted. And to me, there is a little bit of in that still playing with the push and pull of faith is wonderful, but when you combine faith with blinders, you get into a danger area. And I think that's what the armor has done to Din. She's put blinders on him, and she's led him to a place where in this moment, it is both real, deep, spiritual, and Bo-Katan is affected by that. And then he falls off a cliff and has to be rescued because he doesn't know where he is or what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he needs Bo-Katan's knowledge.
Yeah. Hey, look, you even when I look at it too, of life with all of its struggles takes you where maybe you need to go. You want to follow that thought out. If he lands there with no obstacles, he's dead. He's dead.
Yeah.
Grogu doesn't know what to do. Might not know how to save him. Maybe Grogu figures out to go to Bo-Katan, but it's probably too late. So everything that you thought tripped you up is maybe what saves you in the end.
Yeah. And I also think, the presence of the Darksaber, and we didn't spend a lot of time highlighting it, but seeing that Bo-Katan wielded it just fine, and Din's still not quite in rhythm with the Darksaber, still not exactly sure what he wants to do with it. I thought that was great. I think that was set up for future things, but I wanted to talk about the Darksaber because I think in our discussion about fear and faith and finding that balance, I think the Darksaber is such a great symbol to talk about how we invest in symbols, right? Like Bo-Katan is feeling disenchanted with the idea of we're kind of just saying things have magic properties, that's where they're, go wave it around, right? It's another lightsaber. It doesn't have any magic properties.
Right.
And on one side, like, yeah, great. We shouldn't, in my opinion, just be like, the Darksaber is magic, don't question it, which I think the armor is, right? The song said it, so do it. It's true. Don't worry about it. I've told you what it means. Don't worry about it. And I think what Bo-Katan has lost faith in is not a superstitious belief in the Darksaber, but the idea that Mandalorians with full knowledge, with full spirituality of their own volition can choose to invest it with meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, there is just a big difference between, hey, you're told that it has this superstitious level of power, just believe it, versus, hey, if we all believe in the idea of the Darksaber, if we all believe in this symbol, we believe we need someone to lead us, we believe we need somebody to unite us, we believe we need to hold up a blade and fight back and defend the idea of Mandalore. Those are big floaty ideas. So how do we make them? How do we give them focus? How do we give them perspective? We invest them in this thing.
Yeah.
And if you do it blindly, it's dangerous, in my opinion. If you do it with choice, it's communal power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a lot of what the show is building toward with the Darksaber.
Yeah, and again, and how you wield it, right? I love that this weapon, it's not unlike other Jedi blades, right? You're in sync with it. It's yours. Your crystal connects, but this one has just this real powerful meaning. I love that moment of Din still kind of lifting it up. What are you going to do with this? How are you going to wield this? Because you need to figure it out that way. You need to figure out the right way.
Yeah,
and I think it's and I think it's telling that Bo in that moment. It's not something that they missed as creators.
No,
they're very aware of it. So Bo in that moment to have it, it's some fun speculation, but also just it was very a spiritual use of the weapon. I thought
so too, and I thought it was a great. Like, she has been obsessed with it, right? That she needs it, and then it kind of broke her heart, right? And in this dumb way, she didn't have this storybook, this man, Moff Gideon, put us through absolute hell. He took it through me. I will prove my strength and therefore the strength of Mandalore by taking it back. She had this great mythic story that she wanted to happen. And then just this bump, this guy just showed up and got it. And
yeah.
So I did like that she picked it up. She wielded it because right now she's in a point. At that point, she's like, it's a sword, So it doesn't have to be like, oh, I didn't kick anybody's ass to pick it up, and just hand it back because, so it'll be interesting to see after seeing the Mythosaur how her Darksaber feelings evolve.
I think that's the very next conversation. Give me your weapon. No.
Yeah. Last idea that I wanted to touch on, you already touched on, but I wanted to look at it a little bit more. This idea of, pushing past fear and maybe even kind of living up to the legend, right? We talked about with R5 that Peli is pushing him past his fear to live up to what he could be with, you're an astromech, you're meant to be flying ships through the galaxy, fighting tyranny. Maybe Peli overselling it a little bit, but basically really pushing him to like live up to the legend of what you are, of what people think astromechs are, especially astromechs who served in the rebellion. And I think that really matches with a lot of stuff that Grogu is going on with Grogu, right? He's awakened, he's leaping and chattering, and exploring, right?
Yeah.
But he's still
held pod.
Yeah, controlling that pod like nobody's business. But he's still held back by fear, right? And we see this multiple times. Din, assuring him that the planet's scary. He's scared of the great crocodile bats. Pushes through his fear to save Dad. The literal standing up to the Alameth before the Force push is so great. Bo-Katan literally, tells him he needs to push past his fear of, I know you're frightened, but I need you to guide me to him. That little sputter and then the light clicking, forward movement.
Yep.
Let's go before I change my mind.
Yep.
So all pushing past fear stuff, great imagery with pushing through the dark clouds to see what's underneath, all that. But what I wanted to specifically just touch on is the fact that Bo-Katan does make it about being a Jedi, right? Quizzes him about living up to the Jedi legend of, how good are you with the Force? Must be quite good if you got back to me all alone, Your kid did this. He's tougher than he looks. It was a big episode for Din and Bo-Katan and Mandalore, but it was a pretty big episode for Grogu too, of
absolutely
trying to push past the fear and being given examples of what it is to be a Mandalorian and what it is to be a Jedi, and being asked, can you push past fear and live up to those legends?
Absolutely. Put aside the Ranger, be who you were born to be. All this kind of stuff that pops up in myth, and it's powerful stuff. And I think it's important that both are being addressed very clearly. And I love Bo-Katan having that moment of, we got along with some Jedis. Yeah, I don't know what they told you, and we definitely fought, but I knew a lot of Jedi, and we worked together. Like it's a powerful thread. This marrying, this balance of it all. I absolutely think that's it. Without a doubt, can you push past it? Can you push your little pod's go button? That's the question we all have to ask ourselves.
Yep, and he does, and we'll talk about those beautiful beats. The chapter title of this episode is pretty straightforward, "The Mines of Mandalore." But did you get more from it?
Well, I'll tell you what. I was going to our topic up top. I was excited. I was like, "Oh, okay, we're doing it. Like we're right there." So that just meant a lot, just in what the title was telling me. No, I think, look, the imagery of going deep, like you said, what are you going to discover there? What truth you're going to find? I thought that worked for me. While this is a little bit more of an on-the-nose title, I think you can absolutely extrapolate that and put it to the story.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was just thrilling to be like, oh, we're doing this. This isn't the second of 3 deals that Din needs to get to the Mines of Mandalore. It's just the Mines of Mandalore. But I think it's a great way to encapsulate this big question at the heart of the episode of the practical versus the spiritual versus the conceptual. And the Mines of Mandalore representing both real practical value when the Beskar ore was mined. That's real. It's physical. But does this amazing place have conceptual spiritual value as well? And I think the title containing both is a good guide to what it's about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was there anything in this episode that you disliked or questioned?
No, like I said, up top at times choppy. Only since we moved around, and I guess that's maybe a negative word, but you know what I meant. And I like it. You described a slice of life. I think it's sometimes though I have to sit with it, and that's okay. And it is. I think you and I've tried to stop using tone poem as much as maybe we did in the past, but it works for me to describe a lot of Favreau's writing style. So sometimes it sticks out to me a little bit more. Only because sometimes I wanted to see Boonta Eve. Like I wanted to celebrate that, like remove it, and then a little bit of like your head. You're going left and right. You're like Darth Vader looking at Luke and Palpatine. You're like, what, here. Okay. But that's in the end fine, and that's the style. It's purposeful, like you said, and also a great director bringing it home.
Yeah. So you almost feel like you were shown too many shiny things that you're like, ooh, but more of that.
only like last week we said it was almost like 3 1-act plays.
Yeah.
It still had the same vibe to me. So there was like 7 scenes that were from not different shows, but just, it was one of those like 7 stories of Mandalore. I got 22 stories of Springfield. And I know that's a nod to something, but like, you know what I mean? Like, so I personally had that until you touched upon it, until they got together, and then it was electric, I think, as you described it. And I'd support that as well, leading to the big reveal. Then it completely worked for me, where before I kind of had a little bit of like, oh, okay, we're jumping. And I like it.
Yeah. I mean, I think everything before it works for me and is needed to get where we go. I think the main thing for me is I understand if somebody has any tonal whiplash complaints, because to go from the pretty big comedy of Pelly to some of this really deep stuff and creepy stuff, like, yep, it's I've been obsessed with talking about the entertainment history of vaudeville being a little bit of everything. I think Star Wars embraces that and wants to kind of defy being just locked into one thing. So I understand if anybody else doesn't like the tone and staying in one tone a little bit more, like Andor does, I think might be one of the reasons that some people really responded to that.
Yeah.
But for me, I like it because it's bold, it's adventurous. We understand that's a rule for some people.
Yeah.
That you can't have super scary comedy, and heartwarming family lessons, and we're not supposed to do them all at once. We're gonna. To me, that's kind of the heart of Star Wars, and like I'd say, I think writing wise, you might get the note of like, Grogu going back for Bo-Katan makes sense, but it feels like we're doubling back and seeing the same scene again. And
Right.
but for me, sometimes those rules are there for a reason, but sometimes we get obsessed with the rules for the rules' sake. And I think sometimes that's where notes come from, is people kind of learn the rules and then we just say the rules to each other. And I think Favreau was at a point going like, yeah, okay, but it does this. We get to see the way Din reacts to it. We get to see the way Bo-Katan reacts to it. We're building a story where this is about both of their reactions to their home. Din having never been there, Bo-Katan having grew up there and led it and failed it, right? Two very different perspectives. So it is rewarding to see them both go there. It is rewarding for Grogu to have to backtrack because we learn about Grogu. So anyway, sorry, I think I'm reliving some strong feelings about notes I've gotten where I feel like I see what you're saying about the rule, but are you seeing what I'm saying about the spirit of the story?
Yeah. No, it's one of our something you and I've discussed, and maybe we'll discuss in more detail about the Phantom Menace. I love when even famous YouTube videos point out that it doesn't follow the structure. Yeah.
Yep.
You figured it out then, didn't you?
Yep.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Last Jedi breaks some structure rules in order to have the rewarding experience that it very masterfully clockwork like creates, anyway, I think for me, I can see some people bumping on Din's monologuing to Grogu, but I really like his ongoing how to be a Mandalorian, like just that, like, to me it's funny of okay, I don't really know how to be a dad. I know how to protect foundlings and bring them money.
yeah
But how do you be a dad? Explain everything always is. It's charming to me. I also do think that there was some repetition of information throughout the episode of history, ideas, stakes, the mythosaur. But I really think that might pop to really all in Star Wars fans. But I think it's so valuable to have Bo-Katan, read that mythosaur myth. To recenter more casual viewers and make sure that they get to feel the emotional punch too. So I would be on board with the criticism that there's a little bit of repetition, but I think it is there for a reason.
Yeah, I also love that moment. It's like going to the zoo. It just felt like, and this orangutan came from. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, we got to read the historical plaque. Din makes a stop on the road trip to read every historical plaque.
It's like walking in Disneyland, reading the Walt Disney statue inscription. Like, yeah, magical kingdom, blah blah blah.
Yeah, we know. No, pointing. Yeah, got it. He's pointing to the bathroom, right? That's all right. Okay. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to talk about some of the canon, the action, the comedy, and more back in a moment. And we are back to continue our discussion of Chapter 18 of The Mandalorian, The Mines of Mandalore. We're going to get into some big canon stuff. There's a lot of fun stuff, a lot that was stuff that was new, or stuff that was playing with older ideas. So let's start here, Ken, with a place you wanted to see more of, Boonta Eve. Yeah. Of course, people will know the Boonta Eve pod race. Just for clarification, this is what Wikipedia says. Boonta Eve was an annual holiday and festival celebrated on the desert planet of Tatooine during the last decades of the Old Republic and the time of the New Republic. It honored the rise of Boonta Hestilik Shadru to godhood. And most nicely, it was celebrated with fireworks. I think that's a new addition to Wikipedia. How did you feel about getting a little bit more of that sense of Tatooine culture, of Mos Eisley culture in specific, of getting just a little snapshot of Boonta Eve? How did you feel about that?
I love it. Also, again, this show, it's hilarious that Favreau sits on a stage in Chicago and says, I don't know the prequels, but Dave's teaching me. And so many of these episodes and moments and vehicles and are shining a light back on the prequels, but particularly the Phantom Menace. And you can't not think of the pod race. In fact, I got to tell you, I was a little bummed when we're looking at it and you're hearing the sounds. I was like, oh, are we going to see an actual pod race? It was like a different kind of race. And I was like, riot racing? Oh no, it's a different kind of race, which is great. But I wanted to go back to the stadium, I wanted to see it all again. And it was just fun to experience it. And also to have we had seen some of the stuff in the trailer, right? You talked about up top, some shots we had seen before. And I thought it was, it had an end of an episode vibe, right? Mando flies off after he makes a deal. And that's why, again, I love this episode did do its own thing. And it was just what we were seeing was he is riding off to another mission, but we're at the start of an episode. But also it's the culture of the community exploding behind them in wonderful fireworks. I really, really enjoyed it. It was a fun start to the episode.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it just, for hey, this is what Star Wars does. It's the tip of the iceberg. Boonta Eve, we understood, was a holiday that the pod race happened on, just like we have big sports games on holidays. But the pod race was the focus. And hey, now we go a little bit deeper and we see a little bit of the actual celebration. And to me, it was very funny because I don't know if that was any organized race of those two speeders, right? That first shot, or if that was just local hooligans,
Yeah,
street racers. But we get the Jawas running the same scam that Tika kind of ran on Obi-Wan. We're gonna steal your own stuff and sell it back to you. With a middle person now to make it work better. But there's been this fun development of Tatooine in its culture. I get that some people are sick of Tatooine, but I like it as it keeps being new. And one of the things that they've really followed up on, Obi-Wan's negative Yelp review of Mos Eisley as a wretched hive of scum and villainy, got fun follow-ups on as we see Mos Espa being, a little bit bigger, a little bit more working together. Mos Pelgo becoming Freetown. We learned about Mos Eisley from the perspective of Cobb Vanth, and let's be honest, anything goes. In Mos Eisley, anything goes, right?
Yeah.
And so Boonta Eve became like beautiful, fun. It was a time that Peli knows that she can fleece people. And so Boonta Eve suddenly becomes like, and in Mos Eisley, that's spring break. In Mos Eisley, Boonta Eve is a week of, frankly, non-Irish people using St. Patrick's Day as an excuse to get drunk.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, you got to get to the cantina early. They got tents in the back parking lot. They set up there.
And no criticism of the actual meaning of St. Patrick's Day and what it means to the actual cultures involved. But, that sort of joke where other people have said, great, okay, I can use this to cut loose. And seeing that that's what's going on, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Awesome. So let's dive into The Mandalorian, back history and story. There's a lot of great things here. I wanted to ask you about this one, Ken. It might be in our comedy quotes as well. It's a serious moment, but Bo-Katan talking. Din says, "It must pain you to see it like this," and Bo-Katan says, "What pains me is seeing our own kind fight one another time and time again, killing one another for reasons too confusing to explain." I thought that was really powerful because we do know that is an important part of the story, that Mandalore keeps fractioning off and fractured into factions. But also there is this meta humor to me of the actual stories that we've heard of, the stories that we have seen on screen in the Clone Wars and in Rebels. They do get confusing because it is faction after faction turning on one another. Did you enjoy that line in a meta way?
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah, absolutely. It's something that, they have to look in the mirror and deal with themselves anyways. And I know to finally get into the Mandalore culture, to have them discuss it was pretty fun just in terms of the lore side of it. I know a lot of people excited about that, and I am as well.
Yeah. I just felt like even Bo-Katan is looking back over her own history and her own choices. It's exhausting to try to explain to you that this splinter group of the Death Watch sided with this, and then Almec did this, and then so Concord Dawn. Anyway, I thought it was both deep and meaningful, and also a little bit of a funny nod to the fact that it is actually confusing.
Yeah.
I believe it was new information that Din grew up on Concordia, or I should say confirmed, right? Because the armorer says to him, it was only our cults, separating from the actual planet Mandalore that saved us from destruction. Concordia is, there's clear connections between the Children of the Watch and Death Watch. Maybe we'll get some clarity on what the exact sort of relationship between those two groups is. But how did you feel about seeing Din point to Concordia and go, "That's where I grew up, and I've never been to Mandalore"?
It makes a lot of sense from someone like me who didn't travel much as a kid. Yeah, no, I had never really thought too much of Concordia and his relation to it, so it was nice to explore it. I love the how he used it when in explaining things to Grogu, and I thought it's just kind of fun to see it laid out on a map, quite literally.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, I it's funny because I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about Mandalorians clearly in my entire life, so I just kind of smile and nod at a lot of it, like, yep, that's a planet. Let's do it. Let's go there.
Yeah. No, it does. And I think I've been really intrigued by their stories in the animated series and, trying to memorize and track because I think it is rewarding. But sometimes killing one another for reasons too confusing to explain is accurate. But I really I liked this clarification because we also get the information from Moff Gideon that, he served in this specific corps. And so it sounds like at some point he was, like all Mandalorians, sort of drummed into kind of an alignment with the Empire, which we see in Rebels.
Yeah.
So it was good to just get a little bit more sort of clarity on that. And also I think it does explain if he was always with the Children of the Watch, that he never was exposed to different Mandalorian cultures.
Yeah. Never crossed state lines.
Yep, never. I've read about that, but I've never been there. It's great to hear kind of images of Bo-Katan's young life as a princess that tracks so well. I think with like the Clone Wars and what we saw of like, yep, we're warriors, but we're also a very political society with lots of artwork, lots of rituals, all that, and her story of bathing in the waters and saying all the words was great. I thought. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it goes into stuff with her father, which was the first time we really kind of heard this. The only little bummer moment was that I just wanted her to say the name Satine, but that still might come. That still might be earned, and it also would have less meaning to the general public right now. So maybe we find a different way to introduce it. But no, I loved hearing it. It was just very surreal just to see this destroyed, Sundari and just Mandalore, and just having finally spent time with it in Clone Wars and Rebels. That whole thing was surreal, and to learn just a little bit more, because when we meet her, she is a warrior fighting her sister. It was special to know that where it all began. Like, you can almost picture her in I don't know, what are they, Mandalorian princess dress or something? I don't know how it go. So it was a great reflection.
Yeah, and to just think about what a journey she's been on of sort of rejecting her family and getting closer to the Creed by being a member of the Death Watch and on and on and on. The mention of her father, Duke Adonai Kryze. So this is great, Ken. According to Wikipedia, Kryze died in the Mandalorian Civil War that led to Satine's ascension to the throne and her pacifism that we see in the Clone Wars. But are you ready for the source of how this has been established that Bo-Katan's father died there? This vital information to the story of the Kryze family was in Star Wars: Build the Millennium Falcon 32, Guide to the Galaxy, The History of Mandalore. Is a backup article in what I believe to be a short-lived magazine about the Millennium Falcon.
Beautiful. This is what we always say. You must pick up every coloring book because you never know what information will be there.
Yeah. So I think for me, I just wanted to have fun with, what do we know? Where did it come from? But also, I think what's said in the show is that he died defending Mandalore. So I think they're still kind of open to a little bit more information or timeline there.
of all the materials out there that Filoni and team might want to rework, I would expect that book be one that they have the ability to play with a little bit more.
Do not touch the canon of Build the Millennium Falcon 32. Do not. The Alamite creatures, they appear to be brand new. Sometimes I miss something that's a reference to or a regrowth of something from Legends. At least in Wikipedia's brand new tab, there's no Legends. It's just this, the Alamites. They, according to Bo-Katan, they used to live in the surface wastelands beyond our cities. She tells Grogu that the Alamites' intent is to eat the other people. They really evoke to me some classic Star Wars going back to deep genre roots. They really reminded me of the Morlocks from H.G. Wells' The Time Traveler story. Diving in to refresh my memory on the Wikipedia entry for H.G. Wells' The Time Traveler story, I thought this was an interesting passage that I think to me spoke to what's going on with the Alamites. It says the titular time traveler speculates that the relationship between the sort of civilized people and the Morlocks developed from a class distinction present in his own time. The Morlocks are the working class who were relegated to working and living underground so that the rich upper class could live in luxury on the surface. With time, the roles altered, the surface people becoming hedonistic livestock of the underground dwellers. So I think it was really touching on, like, okay, how did those Alamites get to be there? Why were they in the wasteland? Why weren't they in the cities? And this reversal of roles, where now the city has become their home, and the former ruler of Mandalore, traveling through Sundari, is trespassing in their home,
in their territory. A lot to process there.
Yeah. What did you think of the Alamites?
I went through a journey with them. I love the show. Does this a lot. It's celebrated this kind of style, and I love it. But at the same time, sometimes like, I don't know if it's for me. But then I go through. Well, if it was animated, I wouldn't have any problem with it. And this show, I've also said, is like a live action animated show, and it tries to hit those things that you can get away with in animation. Like, crazy creature design, you don't have to worry about how it looks in your world. It's just on screen in this different form. And so it's like I was wrestling back and forth. I was like, I don't know if I like that design. And then I saw Phil Tippett had something to do with it, and I went, shut up. I like it. I like it. Not just that I just go, a spoonful of original trilogy sugar, but it's just like, they know what they're doing. Stop it. So,
yeah, I think to me, like, I get that sometimes the images and designs that are pulling fairly directly from older, fantasy, older science fiction, even other parts of genre can be like, seem clunky or old or cringy.
to
people, like the way people reacted to the title Attack of the Clones. But for me, the use of them is these creators going, especially Phil Tippett was involved. Like, well, when we were younger and we first saw, a film version of the Time Traveler, these struck a chord. They were meaningful. They did represent something. They were the fantastic to us. And it's kind of them going, they're not cheesy. They're not silly. They have meaning. What is evoked by a design like this? What does it make you feel to go, who are these creatures? What are they doing in the ruins of this civilization? And make you wonder what they are. I think it is a reclaiming of the fantasy that these creators felt in their youth.
Yeah, absolutely. From the Harry House and stuff, whatever, a lot of the stuff we saw as well. I think it really works. And it can sometimes be jarring, but look, this is a show where I have no problem believing Grogu is now leaping into people's arms, right? I don't question that for a second. But I still struggle and sometimes question with the existence of these creatures. Just because I'm like, it's a man in a suit. Well, yeah, of course it is. Or it's a CGI. It doesn't matter. It's going to the big lessons of the episode. Sometimes I'm even challenged on these kind of levels. In 2019, I had more problems with this kind of stuff than I do now, but it still pops up. And just seeing Tippett's name involved again was just kind of this reminder of like, they got this. Just enjoy the ride. Fun and neat.
Yeah. So let's talk just a little bit about the creature with no name, General Gollum, as I'm calling him for now. What did you think of the design, and what did you think was the deal? Who or what is that? How did they get there? What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure, again, I want to be clear. I don't know to which degree Phil Tippett was involved, and he could have had more to do with this character than the other ones. But just seeing his name in the credits made me calm down a bit. But I love this character. My thought is that, you invoked the name of Grievous. Sounds like an incantation, but and I've seen it elsewhere too. But why wouldn't you? That eye was, very reminiscent of Grievous. So therefore I just kind of took it as the same kind of thing. It might have been a real creature at one point. It might have been a real person at one point. Who knows? But they're down there, and this is what they become. And it's just so wonderfully creepy. It has Dark Crystal-like, which is a movie that always creeped me out as a kid because I was just so scared of things. Again, when he's first captured, when Den's first captured, it's kind of crazy. And you got like the big, almost crab ant-like super droid. That was creepy enough for me, but then the unveiling was so well done. Just crawling out of that shell, the larger shell, and you got the true creature inside, and then the head comes off. Very effective. So that worked on a lot of levels for me.
Yeah. I think it's just between General Gollum and the Alamites. You've got this challenge of this is a mythic story. Din and Bo-Katan they have to face trials as they push past their fear and go to the depths to find the truths, right? So what are the trials? Okay, well, maybe some beings who perhaps weren't treated well and left to fend for themselves in the wastelands, and then somebody, some creature that used to be some level of organic, certainly seems intelligent, using high tech, but brought to this kind of disturbing low animal-like place, but is this sort of symbol of like anything to survive that we've seen before in Star Wars, right?
Yes.
We've seen it with Grievous, we've seen it with Vader, we've seen it with Maul, and to see kind of another vision of that, of just like there's also this suggestion that there's more hope, that there's people who survived, or there's people who come through there enough that I apologize, I keep saying he, I have no idea about the gender of the creature, that they use nostalgia and pain as a trap, right? To set the helmet with just enough peeking out of like, all these Mandos come through here with their heart on their sleeve. This is, I just got the vibe, this is not the first time this being laid that trap and got enough blood to keep going out of the deal.
Yeah, this isn't a finally. This is a again moment, indeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I love that. Maybe we'll learn more. Maybe there'll be a whole book about this character. Who knows? But definitely wanted to spend a little bit of time on this character.
Right.
R5D4, of course, we know from that film Star Wars. But a lot of people have been excited that they felt like Pelimoto's line about him serving in the rebellion was calling out to some of his various stories in Legends and in kind of canon from the book, from a certain point of view. The story, The Red One, where is basically a story where it is R5D4 remembers vaguely that he used to be a part of the rebellion, and R2, both sabotages him and talks him into blowing his top on purpose. How did you feel about R5D4's presence in general? Any connection to that story? What were your thoughts?
It's, I guess, I do like it. I have these kind of moments where, in the best way possible, I'm like, that's the droid that saw Luke, like and it's there at his little droid port. Now we're talking about R5D4. I've lived with this character all my life as the other droid, right? And it's both fun. I don't have a negative view on it at all, but I have a confused reaction to it. I'm struggling to explain what I feel, because I like the acknowledgement of his past, or even kind of adding to his past, whether it's a direct callback to things you're talking about, and that story. But I have that problem with even the story, that the from a certain point of view story, where I'm like, I don't know if it needed to be a choice. I don't know. And it's not a negative thing. It's just like, could have just been a droid. And so to see him back here to really confirm his place in the story, it's been a fun adventure as a longtime Star Wars fan. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I have a couple out of show experiences watching him in this episode of going, that's the droid. That droid spoke to like Uncle Owen. it's only like 10 years ago.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
In R5's timeline. Yeah, I understand. I think that's part of the reason I wanted to bring it up, because I think that it is complex. I think I think that Red One story is well written. There's the infamous Legends, I believe, comic book story that implies that R5D4 had the Force. That's in that R5D4 sense that Luke was important. That I'm definitely not super excited about. I like the Red One story just fine. It's a good story. I don't know that I needed it to be a story, but I somehow responded to R5D4's presence in Mandalorian differently, because I think it goes back to what we were talking about at the top of the episode of, I had R5D4. There are times I think where I didn't have an R2, but I had an R5. I had to make do, and I had to make up stories. And I know that the creators are coming from that perspective of, this is the beauty of Star Wars. This is the wonder that this just droid who's a plot point in the movie can become this launching off point for thoughts and adventures. And I think there's a real sincere spirit in the Mandalorian show of, if it's fan service, I think it's fan service to Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and everybody who is helping make this character come to life, because there's a real why not of we played with this toy and we want to give it a story. And this one's a great story of like, even R5D4 can be pushed past fear to live up to the potential of who and what they are. I think when the story first started, like, oh wow, R5D4 is going on a mission. I had this reaction that's about fear. I had this reaction of, maybe I don't like this because everybody's going to yell at this as fan service and trying to sell us new R5D4 toys, and it's just playing with action figures and they can't let anything from the past go. And I heard all that negativity. And then as the episode went on, and the episode was about Bo-Katan fighting that negativity to get back to a spirit of, it's okay to imbue things with meaning if you're doing it with knowledge and purpose. Yeah. And I kind of went on the journey of like, you know what? Why shouldn't we play with R5D4? Yeah. No, so you said a lot of wonderful things there, but the word jumped out was sincere. I really like even in previous Mandos and Book of Boba Fett of EV-99 showing up or 88 showing up, right? That could be any other droid, but why not be a droid that we all saw in Jabba's palace? Why not be Max Rebo? Why not, we got something new, Astromech Drummer. Why not be Rebo? And now we have a story, because that is part of the fun. And I understand, sometimes the pushback. By the way, I don't see a lot of anti-R5D4 discourse right now on Twitter. But to your point of like, I think that's what I was maybe trying to capture. Just like I'm staring at this going, oh, that is R5. So now every time I watch New Hope, I know that this is what happens. And you can deal with that two different ways. And sometimes I have that, I don't know if that happened reaction. Other times I'm like, you know what? It did. And it's fun. And why not? Because this is Star Wars. And it's this, we flip over the back of the card package, the figure package, to see all those figures there with the possibilities of stories attached to them. That's part of the tradition of it. So why not? Why not? Yeah. Why not R5D4? And I think the key thing to me is if there's still new too, and there was much that was new in this episode. Last kind of canon thing for me is obviously Peli had a lot of little name checks in her pattern, no chance cubes and all that kind of thing. But I was thrilled that she mentioned the Lurmen, saying that Grogu was leaping like a Lurmen. Lurmen are the little pacifist space raccoons from early Clone Wars episodes, Jedi Crash and Defenders of Peace, but they always stand out in my mind because the lead Lurman's got a real good voice and just giving it to the Jedi about not wanting them there.
Love that. Yeah, great stuff too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other canon thoughts for you?
No, you hit all the big ones there, and there was a lot, and a lot of Mando stuff. Just a lot of episodes do provide a lot of canon connections, and I enjoy that a lot more than other programming at times.
Yeah, and this one was particularly gratifying because some of it was, revealing more, clarifying more, adding new things, really getting into the heart of this Mandalorian history that is animating so many of the characters. Yeah. Let's talk about action. There were definitely some big action moments. Did you have some favorite beats?
I did. We had a couple, little breaks in the emotional action. Mando, we talked about Mando having the sword and a little weighty, but I just love the he's got the sword, but you can also use a fist, just punch him right in the face.
Which he does. He does, some blasting, some stabbing, some punching. But he's like, this is a sword worthy. Man, I love that whole thing, but I particularly loved it when the sword came out, when the Darksaber came out. That I love fights in high places. It's always better if somebody can fall. And there was this great tension of not only is it heavy, but I love that almost every time he seems to fight with it, he's somewhere he could fall, which adds to the tension.
That's we all know heights and guardrails and stuff in Star Wars, but
Yep. I really like I really like the final stab and then the pushing over the edge and watching the Alamite fall all that way. That was great. This is kind of an action moment. It's not a fighting moment, but I also, did I love the shots of both Din and Grogu and then Bo-Katan and Grogu jumping over that ledge and flying down into the vast unknown. That was just beautiful action shots. What did you think?
I love it, and it's not the first time we've seen a Mandalorian use a jetpack, but it is the first time we've seen Grogu go, let's do it. And I love. We highlighted it last week. I highlighted the fact that he seems to be controlling the pod this week. It definitely confirms it. He is riding around that thing like a little space golf cart, and I'm here for it.
He's got the joystick. Yep, he is. And apparently you can just go straight down. That was great. Yeah. Absolutely great. What were some other action moments for you?
We got a lot of stuff. Bo-Katan getting to show what she can do. The line from the trailer, you didn't think your father was the only Mandalorian. But just, again, after seeing her in action so many times, we saw it last season, but so many times in Clone Wars and Rebels, it's fun and surreal to see it really happening here. It's a lot of fun. So her little wrist shield comes out, all that stuff. It's just fun to see her in action. A lot of great moves, a lot of great stunt performers working there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great to see her different, technique with her, two blasters and the shield and all that stuff that is from the animated show. The shot that I really liked of Bo-Katan is the knee slide with the Darksaber, cutting into the guts of the robotic, scary monster. I would have liked it all by itself, but then I remembered that interview where Bo-Katan, where Katie Sackhoff said, I really like doing knee slides. So there's a bunch of stunt performers, but when it's a knee slide, it's me. So it's like, is that Katie Sackhoff?
That's her. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
For me, there were just kind of countless great Grogu moments that are, somewhere between great action moments, great comedy moments, great character moments. When he first tries to rescue Din and he does the little sneak walk. I almost wanted to hear the little cartoon. That was great. When he is just trucking with the pod and he has to veer away from the scary crocodile bat. Priceless.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Love that. No, and again, here I am. Sometimes I don't know if I like the fourth eye on that alien. Is that a stunt performer in that costume? And over here, I'm like, Grogu's real. You can't convince me he's not real. So it's go or open up your heart to all of it. But yeah, Grogu is just great.
Oh yeah. I love what you're saying about never questioning Grogu, because he had a lot of moments in this that were like, yep, they are committed to that. We generally don't CGI things that the puppet kind of couldn't do. Right. It doesn't move that way. It isn't and suddenly in this one shot, extremely flexible limbs and all that kind of stuff. I also loved when he encounters the Alamite. We've seen the image of the Alamite, flying out.
Yeah.
But I love when the All Might growls at him, and Grogu just he's frightened, but then he just stands up in his little pod, and it really is like, bleep it, I got this.
Yeah.
It was a cheer moment. It was a wake my wife who'd already gone to bed moment for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very much the I know what I'm supposed to do. I've seen it on display. I have no fear in this moment because I am aware of who I need to be here.
Yeah, absolutely great. And then final Grogu moment for me. I love the intent of it when Bo-Katan is telling him, like, I know you're scared, but you got to move forward. And he makes that little grunt, hits his light, and goes.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Any other action moments for you?
No. I think there's some great sequences, a lot of fun. So unless you count diving into water as action, I'm good.
That was a good one. Let's talk some comedy whimsy moments. Any comedy and whimsy moments that jumped out to you?
Again, look, anytime Grogu gives a worried coo, or I think he's so close to speaking his first word. I do love that Peli. I thought that was really funny that Peli's kind of almost playing on it, the audience expectation. So I love. I can start there, but I love that.
I really like that throughout of just like there's too many to write down, but I love Grogu's really increased verbalizing without yet saying words. But it is funny and charming, and Peli pointing it out and going, did he say Peli? And like he really didn't. So it makes it feel like we are building up to a first word someday, but it also kind of makes me feel like we don't know the development rate of this species, and there's a little bit of me that's like, is this some trauma? Like if Order 6 never happened and Yoda was, chatting with him and helping him, he'd be, saying full sentences by now, and this is part of his trauma, It's I just thought I'd bring up trauma while we're talking about comedy and whimsy. What were some other moments for you?
It's probably going to be some very popular TikTok videos this week, but I am here for exhausted Bo-Katan, just mentally, emotionally exhausted Bo-Katan. You mentioned the blanket. There's some great conversations out there. Again, these videos, I forget the actual, everyone probably knows by now, the sweatpant Bo-Katan meme that's been going around in TikTok video. Just, how long is she sitting in that chair? And you know what? I've been depressed like that. Mm-hmm. She's probably been sitting there for days. Like, that's why the blankie's there. All right. And I just, I love the energy there. Real funny and purposeful, but funny.
Yeah. And that energy of like, I'm going to get rid of him once and for all.
Yeah. Now she's up. Now she's like, all right. Nothing.
Yeah. That was really funny. I really love that. Jumping back to Peli for a minute. I like the through line that she has not replaced the tooth she lost in a Book of Boba Fett.
Speaking of lore, right? Peli tooth.
Yeah. Now that would be the merch line that I won't cross if Galaxy's Edge starts selling Peli Motto's lost tooth on a necklace. I won't buy that.
No, okay, fair enough.
Too far. I did like how Mos Eisley gets during Bunta Week in the guzzling gesture. We talked a little bit about the comedy of that. I like it when they first land on Mandalore and Din's like, "Hey, let's get going," and R5D4 just shakes his head no. Nope, not happening. Yeah. Other moments for you?
God, I had one down there at the end. Oh, well, yeah, just all the Bo-Katan and Grogu stuff. Just even the glance. What are you looking at? All that kind of stuff. It's just fun. The pairing of Grogu and Blank is always fun. Like Peli's got this reaction, Din's got obviously his father reaction. And then you got tough, hard, exhausted Bo-Katan, who I think's heart is melting around Grogu as well, including the cockpit opens up on the N1 and it's like, oh, this isn't good, and I want to help this little guy.
Yeah. Well, and it's really fun to see somebody else interact with Grogu with kind of full respect for everything that he is and could be.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because like Peli loves him. It's like this adorable, weird creature. Like if he splits, give me one, there's sincere love there, but to see Bo-Katan treat him as like, yeah, you're a Mandalorian foundling. You're a Jedi. I've fought with your kind, both with them side by side. And I've fought them. Which is another fun canon thing to go through the list of Jedi she's that we've seen her interact with. Yeah, so I loved all that. A moment that I don't know if it was meant to be comedy, but it made me laugh is it was painful when Bo-Katan was looking out over the ledge and saying that this was once a beautiful civilization. Now it's a tomb. Let's go.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. Final one for me is this moment you've been talking about when Din has the very meaningful "This is the way," and I almost interpreted Grogu's stare like he's watching, he's learning, and I almost think he's looking at Bo-Katan like, "Aren't you supposed to say it back?"
Yes.
Which triggers the "What are you looking at?"
Yeah, no, yeah. You cannot underestimate Grogu's ability to comprehend what's going on. Right? Don't do that. He's seeing it.
No, he's taking it all in.
Mm.
Any other comedy moments for you?
No, that was it. A lot of whimsy, a lot of spirit, a lot of wonder. Even the moment right before he's trapped, when he finds that helmet buried, it's a lot of hope in that moment for me until it ends in him being trapped.
Yeah, absolutely. Along those lines, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you wanted to talk about?
No, we've nailed it. I mean, Deep Thieves of like this episode got me, got me in the feels spiritually, and that's what I like. Mando has been that about all now in the 3 seasons and Book of Boba Fett. That's why I talk about loving Book of Boba Fett so much. It's got the spirit to it. It's this wandering through the desert, and finding yourself kind of spiritual story, and I love that. And Andor is a little bit different, and the buffet that you and I have talked about for a long time, it's really in full effect right now, which maybe going to the top is why sometimes I get a little, sometimes you get a little sad that people have reaction. Again, you can like we've gone down that path before.
Yeah.
This episode just really hit me, and I loved it. And I'm thankful for the walk of faith this episode was taking us on.
Yeah, no, I really agree. The ideas were so powerful. I like this style of the Mandoverse. I think in recent interviews, Jon Favreau has talked about like I like the way these characters process the world. I'm deeply paraphrasing. He said something along those lines, and I think it really is that these are characters who are kind of going through extremely hard things, extremely relatable things, but there's sort of a minimal nature to it of like they're taking it all in, they're processing it, they're trying to find that next step forward. That makes it all really powerful, and I feel like we did a great job talking about so many things that make it really powerful. If anything, I just wanted to shout out that I think there's so much great design. I love how well established it's been, down to Boba Fett saying the Empire turned that planet to glass. Getting the armor is like the fusion bombs did blah blah blah, but then to see it, right, to see that the shattered destruction of this planet is also kind of beautiful. And in an episode that asks characters to push past their fear, to ask them if they can live up to the legend of what they are. Like, I find meaning and beauty in that shot of R5D4 where that reflection of him is running in the glass. It's just a beautiful shot. It's aesthetically pleasing, but it echoes these ideas to see this reflection of yourself as you're walking on devastation. That's also beautiful. They're just endless great shots. Din picking up before the trap springs that helmet. This is a person who's based their entire life on the creed of this place and never been there. And we get to walk with him the first time and holding that helmet of the past up the helmet that means so much to him. I could go on and on. The visuals are really, really powerful at communicating the story as well.
No, indeed.
All right. Well, any predictions or hopes for the next week, or kind of where the story is going now that it's opened up a bit?
The Mythosaur rides again. I think that thing, whether it's, again, I'm saying 2% prediction that it isn't even real. All right. But go with me, folks. But I think it emerges and we have to deal with that. And like you said, I've always said I'm bad at predictions, but really, there's no need to go search for IG-11's memory. Maybe. There's no need. We're through the looking glass now, people. It's a different spot. So I think we're going to have a direct continuation, and we're going to see it, and we're going to have to deal with what's down there, in so many different ways. And it's a vague and bold prediction.
Yeah, no, I love it. You're being vague, and I think, hey, we're putting a couple credits on the idea that the Mythosaur is animatronic. I think that's what we're doing here.
You think like in-world animatronic?
Yeah, like I think that Din in Bo-Katan convinced the armor, convinced scattered Mandalorians everywhere. Like, you gotta see this, and they get down there and like, it's a tourist trap. There's plushies of Mythosauruses down here too.
I love it. The only reason I really say that there's like 2% in my brain that wonders what did they see, that is I watched it a few times this morning. This little beat, I swear you see it before, but really you don't. It's just The Rock, and Bo-Katan's going down. She has the headlamp on, which, by the way, Grogu having a lamp is amazing on that prep. But I just was like, wait, maybe I think you see it before. So then I was like, no, I'm imagining it. Then I'm like, well, maybe everyone's imagining what they saw, and she's the only one that really saw it. So we don't know. Maybe it was some spiritual vision, or you know what I mean. And I went down that path. But for the most part, I think the show, from Quill talking about it in episode 2. Or maybe even at the end of episode 1, I can't remember now.
It's episode 1.
It's
like your people, rode the mighty mythosaur, and you can't ride this blurg.
Yeah, I think we've been kind of leading there. And I set up top. The previous sound kind of spoiled it. Only in the sense, if you're so clued into the show, I saw that and I went, I wonder if we're going to see the mythosaur in the water this week. And I know that even Ash has got now a clip going around asking Pedro the same thing last week in interviews. So we're certainly not the only one, but it just is that's the first moment. I was like, oh, okay. Oh, we're definitely going to see one. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. The shock to me wasn't that we saw a mythosaur. It has been set up since the first episode with Queel calling it out, with Din getting the Darksaber, with Armor mentioning it again in Book of Boba Fett. To me, the power of it was the way we saw it, and that we saw it through Bo-Katan's eyes, and the power of seeing it through Bo-Katan's eyes is, the how matters as much as the what. Sometimes we talk about the why, but also the how.
The how does matter. And I said a joke, and you just kind of, went that same direction of like, we don't know what he saw, because he slips, falls down the cliff under the water and is sucked down it, and he might be eyes closed. He might have never seen it, and she's the one that sees. I don't want to say the reward for the faith, but you know what I mean. Like, and that they could that's an interesting conversation. Did you hear me? I swore underwater because it's there. What? No, I just was I was doing my spiritual bath. Like, that's an interesting thing to go forward with and deal with. That she's got, he may have not.
In this show might be her saying it's real. I saw it to Din, but it also might just be like, I received the message that even the Empire, even all of our infighting, couldn't get deep enough to kill the true heart of Mandalore. It lives, and my faith is restored. Not my blind faith, but my faith in the fact that we can rise again. We can come together.
Yeah.
And maybe Din doesn't know. What happened to her when she had to take a bath,
Yes, this is interesting. I know we're hitting 2 hours. We probably want to go, but you just hit on another thought I had. I putting some chips down on, we never see it again. I'm talking a small bet. I think we see it, I don't know, but I don't know. There's something, what you're saying there. It's kind of what I was feeling even last night when I watched it the first time, of that might be the only glimpse. It could be powerful if you choose to do that. I think it could be powerful if you choose the other way, and it emerges and we literally have them riding it. I don't know, but the spirit of it, the what it represents, it's a toy and it means the world, right? That could be pretty powerful. Curious. I'm so open to any way they take it, but it could go a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see where they take it. I lean towards some full riding.
Totally.
And I think looking ahead, the things that I'm interested in is finally Bo-Katan and Din really talking. We've got bits and pieces of it. And I think a thing that could really come to life as they connect and speak more is the show's reckoned with her leading and Satine's leadership. The show hasn't reckoned with the fact that we met Bo-Katan brutalizing an innocent village. That Bo-Katan helped Maul take Mandalore and played a hand in getting bringing her sister's horrible end. And the show hasn't also fully reckoned with, like, yep, those are Death Watch symbols on the Mandalorians who rescued young Din. It's Death Watch and Children of the Watch, and they seem to have similar beliefs and lived in a similar place.
Yeah.
The show's been nibbling around the edges of that connection between Bo-Katan and Din and how Bo-Katan feels with it and deals with it. So I really hope that they kind of go all in on the relationship between the Death Watch and the Children of the Watch at some point.
Yeah, agreed on that. I would love that. That's hanging over.
Yeah, and then I think I got some guesses from what we have yet to see, the beats we've yet to see in the trailer. I feel like there's, possibility of, and if you haven't watched the trailer and don't want to know, tap out for 45 seconds. But that the Gorian Shard and the pirates come for Navarro City, and Din's got the Darksaber. Din's back in the fold, and he commands the Mandalorians to defend it. Yeah. I think that's a possibility. But the big thing for me is if what's on the table is, can all of these factions of Mandalorians come together and be strong enough to work together to face a threat? What is the threat? Because I kind of thought it might be a lot of infighting to get to Mandalore, to get to the Mythosaur. And maybe it'll be a lot of infighting to get back. But we know Moff Gideon's there. So I'm kind of just curious, like, what's the bigger threat that tests the ability for the Mandalorians that we know to be one and to be whole and to be strong enough to face the fist of whatever is threatening them, since they weren't together and strong enough to face the fist of the Empire, as Bo-Katan says.
No, I think that's a great, big, important question. Yeah, what can unite them? What truly can get them together? What's the reason that you must do it for our survival? What is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we could talk all day, and we'll keep talking more. We also have a Bad Batch episode coming out later. That was a phenomenal episode of Bad Batch as well. If you want to feel some Star Wars feelings, what a day, what a week. We are going to wrap up with our fun question that we have now imbued with great meaning. What action figures or merch do you want inspired by this episode?
I mean, you kind of touched on the Mythosaur plush. I think if those don't already exist, they very well could. I'd go with that. But I do think now more than ever, I do want an updated Grogu drone that's very realistic, that can go up and down and fire, has a light. That light was like, not only is it cute, he's got a light, but also, that's functional. Okay, I could use this. I need it because I take the dogs out in the backyard late at night. I gotta have a flashlight. I could just have Grogu floating, or Bo-Katan has that floating light bulb. I could use that too, but I want it in a Grogu style.
Oh, that floating light bulb was great. I need that for my storage space. That was amazing tech. Great fantasy stuff. No, I'm with you. I feel like sincere answer is the expensive deluxe General Gollum, whatever that character's real name is. That is the kind of beautiful, frightening weirdo I love to collect in plastic. I have a lot of Din and Grogu action figures. They're going to keep making Din and Grogu action figures because they're profitable and they're meaningful. I love the absurdity of when you make very specific action figures. I have both the vintage and the Black Series action figures of Din and Grogu from Maldo Kreese. And they're the same action figures. They just got a little snow on them.
Yes, there you go.
They come with an ice spider. So I definitely need a wet Din Djarin action figure. Stripped of everything and choking, if you want to be really high end, you can get some drips of water on him. And then I need Grogu in his pod with flippant action where you can hit a button. It makes the action figure flip up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I love what you're talking about. Bath time Din. Needed.
There you go. A big episode about power of faith and pushing through fear and meaning. And also, we need bath time Din Djarin. Ken, where can people find us?
Hey, you can find us on Twitter at Force Center Pod. We're on Hive Social as well, Instagram and YouTube. Subscribe over there so you don't miss things like essays, shorts, and live shows. Next one will be announced soon. You can also follow us on Instagram. A lot of fun over there. You can buy merch at tpublic.com/user/Force Center. You can find the podcast a lot of spots. Just search, you will find us. And you can support us directly at patreon.com/Force Center. From there, get into our Discord where a lot of new people are there this week talking Star Wars with all of our Force Center friends. Follow me at Napzok or go to my website, napzok.com. And I do encourage you to listen to the Bad Batch Report. Great episode this week. One of my favorite pieces of Star Wars storytelling. We go in deep here on the feed. Joseph.
Brutal and beautiful episode of The Bad Batch. It was great to see people's reaction to Mandalorian flow in. And then, and now I watch Bad Batch. Jeez. You can find me on social media. Find my pictures of my action figures and alcohol on Twitter, Instagram, Mastodon, lots of other places. You can also check out my comedy and short films on my YouTube page. Just search for Joseph Scrimshaw. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for the animatronic mythosaur, this has been the Mandalorian Report.